Stephanie White has announced the roster for tomorrow's Washington Mystics Indiana Fever game, and SYD Colson is starting at the point. Plus, Caitlin Clark is practicing with the team today, and she's walking around okay, so this is good news. It is undeniable that Caitlin Clark is the engine that makes the Indiana Fever offense run. And it is unfortunate that she did go down with an injury. Luckily, this is not a season-ending injury. It is not any career-type ending injury. I think this is such a big deal because of the weight that she has, the weight that she carries on her shoulders for the success of the WNBA, or much of it, many of the viewership, much of the ratings, attendance in the arena. I mean, the United Center game that they're playing with the Chicago Sky was supposed to be over 20,000 people in attendance, was supposed to be the most attended WNBA, oh my gosh, game in history. And now that is all, up in the air. Indiana Fever tickets have dropped 42% for the games in the next 2 weeks, unfortunately. But there is a silver lining in all of this. I'm just not somebody who cries over spilt milk. And while I do understand people deciding to not watch the game anymore because Caitlin Clark was the reason that they watched and was the most exciting part, I do love watching the WNBA, and I do like watching all of the games. I will actually be attending the Liberty Valkyries game later this evening since I'm in New York. But Stephanie White did tell the media when they interviewed her during the Indiana Fever practice, a practice of which Caitlin Clark was walking around in, and was shooting three-pointers at. Girl, you need some rest. But Steph White did tell the media that in Caitlin Clark's stead, she will be starting Sydney Colson at the point. If I were to have to make a wager previous to this announcement, I would have thought that she might be starting Sophie Cunninghame, but this is what Stephanie White said to the media.
Practices as trying to figure out new rotations, who's going to run point. Have you kind of nailed that down yet ahead of tomorrow?
Yeah, we're going to start Sydney point tomorrow. We're going to give that a look. Sophie's going to get a heavy dose of it as well. The other thing that we love is what Sophie and or Lexi, whichever one, brings us from the bench, and having that spark, having that punch. So we're gonna look at Syd in that starting lineup to start.
So this is how I see White's strategy. I think that she is starting SYD Colson because SYD Colson, she has not had any minutes. She has not had a lot of court presence this season, but she does have a lot of veteran experience at the point. And she has not been producing that much, but I say this a lot, 80%, at least 80% of basketball is mental. And SYD Colson stepping in at the moment might not be as taxing as Sophie Cunninghame having to step in in a completely new role and a completely new team. So possibly starting out with SYD Colson, seeing how it works, reserving Sophie Cunninghame for the spark plug that she is. I think it's understated how important a sixth man on a team is, because a sixth man can invigorate energy and inject energy into lulls of a game that can completely change the game, which is why I say that Sophie Cunninghame is my predicted X factor for the season. X factors aren't generally starters, so her role being the X factor, it's actually integral to the success of the team. And what I got from Steph White's interview was that yes, SYD Colson would be starting, but that Sophie Cunninghame would be getting integral minutes at the point guard position. And, Sophie Cunninghame did come in as the spark plug in the preseason game against the same Mystics team when the Indiana Fever were struggling, and she turned that game around, ending in a win for the Indiana Fever. So it could be that White is deferring to Colson to fill in for her veteran experience in the position and looking for Cunninghame to be that spark plug off the bench, not to mention that it allows Stephanie White to keep the rotations in place, so it wouldn't detract Sophie Cunninghame too much for starting as a point guard. So for when Clark does come back, everybody is kind of more gelled together. And while, yes, this is going to be a test, and losing Clark at the helm is a big blow to the Indiana Fever, but there is growth potential from it. For when Clark does come back, they are only all the better. And while we're looking at silver linings, I did write a piece for the Indiana Fever on SI about how the Indiana Fever are going to need to tighten up their offense, specifically their ball movement, while leaning on their top tier defense to stay competitive in the league. I could actually just read you what I wrote, which is the Indiana Fever will be without their starting point guard, Caitlin Clark, for at least 2 weeks. And I go into how she suffered the injury. Not a lot of people know this, so I definitely have to preface every article with that. I talk about how it's a blow not just to the team, not just to Caitlin Clark, but to the WNBA, as she has become a marquee attraction. And then I go into Caitlin Clark is undeniably the offensive engine, which is what I mentioned earlier. She averages 19 points, 9.3 assists, and 6 rebounds a game, and nobody even comes close to the assists. Nobody even comes close to the playmaking and the ball movement that Caitlin Clark does to generate points. Now, Aaliyah Boston does have elite IQ on the court, especially for a big, but she's currently averaging 2.3 assists per game, as is Kelsey Mitchell, 2.3 assists per game. Nobody on the team is averaging more than that. Now, if you compare that with the other top 2 teams in the league, the New York Liberty and the Minnesota Lynx, especially the Minnesota Lynx have 7 starters that average 2.3 or more assists per game. Their ball movement is beautiful. And that's without Kayla McBride, who will be returning soon. Kayla McBride is an integral member of the Minnesota Lynx, so when she comes back, you can expect them to be all the better. But let's just compare that to the New York Liberty. The New York Liberty have 4 players with more than 2.3 assists per game. I think that Sabrina has over 4. Stewie, I think, also has over 4. Jonquel Jones has more than 3 assists per game. And Tosh Cloud, she's just on fire. She is leading the charge for assists on the New York Liberty. The Minnesota Lynx rank number 1 in ball movement, that's assists, and the New York Liberty rank number 2 in assists made in the league. The Indiana Fever rank number 5. Now, that is not saying that is everything. That is all what their offense is about. But as currently the Indiana Fever are ranked number 3 in offense in the league. But I'm pretty much talking about the ball movement and the playmaking, because in addition to the assists, Caitlin Clark is also the Indiana Fever's leading scorer at over 19 points a game. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell are closely following her, but the majority of Aaliyah Boston's points have come from assists from Caitlin Clark, or at least a huge portion of them. So they are definitely going to have to be working together. They are going to have to be looking at the court in a different way, because I don't know if it's that Caitlin Clark kind of crippled them by being the floor general that let everybody just kind of run around and be in their spots for assists from her, but they're now going to have to step it up. Another silver lining in this is that to say that Indiana's defense has just gotten a little better is an understatement. It has gotten significantly better, and they are going to be relying on a lot of that defense because, one, I don't know what's going on with DeWanna Bonner. She is in a shooting slump. I did see this happen last season, though. She had a month where she was in a shooting slump, and I saw her kind of being the same way, where she was acting like she was in her head and very hesitant and hard on herself when she made some mistakes. And I think she just lets it overcome her at times. But you know what? She's going to have to get out of that. But she is doing great defensive stuff. And I do see Michaela Timpson coming in for minutes. I think that she is going to have to show her defensive prowess. She is going to have to flex that wingspan of hers. And luckily, the next stretch of games for the Indiana Fever are not the most difficult. Not until June, when they play the Liberty. They are playing the Washington Mystics twice. They are playing the Connecticut Sun, who have not won a game yet. We'll see later today who wins a game, because I think that the Sun is also playing the Dallas Wings, and neither team have won a game, so we'll very interested in that. But yeah, so the Indiana Fever are playing the Mystics twice. They are playing the Connecticut Sun. They are playing the Chicago Sky, also have not won a game. They are playing the Dream. That might be a little scrappy. And then comes the Liberty later on in June 14th to be more precise. So it is a few weeks away. In any case, Caitlin Clark will undoubtedly be on the sidelines, be viewing from a coaching perspective, which is fascinating because the first time that she was sidelined, she did mention having the different perspective helped her understand the game more in that preseason game. Honestly, anything positive that you can take out of this, I will be taking. But as far as Syd Colson starting the point, I can see why Steph White would start her. I don't think that she'll get many minutes. I do think that Sophie Cunningham will be coming in either late in the first quarter or early in the second quarter to kind of like take over and then maybe be subbed in by Syd Colson at moments. Or Syd Colson could just go off. Who knows? In any case, this will be a very interesting experiment or, show of growth. So I will be tuning in and I will update you guys afterwards.